Emma Martinez loved mornings on New Haven. The 8-year-old girl stood at her bedroom window, watching the purple sun rise over the crystal trees. The alien world had been her home for 3 years now, ever since her parents moved here to start. The farming colony. "Emma, breakfast is ready," her mother Linda called from the kitchen. Linda was a plant scientist who studied the strange flowers that grew on New Haven. She had long brown hair and kind eyes that always smiled when she looked. Emma ran downstairs and hugged her father Carlos. He was a doctor who took care of all the families in the colony. Carlos had taught Emma how to be gentle with the small animals that lived in the crystal forests. "Today we go to collect samples from the blue crystal grove," Carlos said, ruffling Emma's dark hair. "Would you like to come with us?" Emma's eyes lit up. She loved exploring the forests with her parents. The animals there were different from Earth animals, but they seemed to trust her. Even the shy crystal foxes would come close when she sat quietly and spoke softly to them, got the family finished breakfast, and packed their equipment. They climbed into their small transport vehicle and drove toward the forest. The crystal trees made beautiful music when the wind blew through them, like tiny bells ringing. Emma pressed her face against the window, watching for animals. She saw a family of blue rabbits hopping between the trees. A golden bird with 4 wings flew overhead. Everything on New Haven was peaceful and beautiful. "Look at that," Linda said, pointing to a grove of trees that sparkled like diamonds. "Those crystals might help us grow better crops." Carlos stopped the transport near the grove. A family got out and began setting up their equipment. Emma wandered a short distance away, following a butterfly that had wings like stained glass. Butterfly led her to a small clearing where a hurt animal lay on the ground. It looked like a deer, but it had silver fur and tiny crystals growing on its antlers. The creature was breathing hard and seemed afraid. Emma knelt down slowly and spoke in a soft voice. "It's okay, little one. I won't hurt you." She had learned that animals could understand kindness even if they didn't understand words. The crystal deer looked at her with large, frightened eyes. Emma could see a thorn stuck in its front leg. Very carefully, she reached out and pulled the thorn free. The deer made a soft sound, almost like a thank you. Emma smiled and patted the deer gently. The animal stood up, no longer limping, and bounded away into the forest. Emma felt happy that she had helped. But as she turned to go back to her parents, she heard a terrible sound. Loud engines roared overhead. 3 large, dark ships appeared in the sky above the crystal grove. They were not human ships. Emma ran toward her parents, but the ships were faster. Beams of red light shot down from the ships, and alien soldiers in metal suits jumped to the ground. The soldiers looked like lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had long tails, sharp teeth, and yellow eyes. Their skin was covered in dark scales, and they carried weapons that crackled with electricity. "Emma, run!" Carlos shouted. He grabbed a piece of equipment to use as a weapon, but the lizard soldiers were too strong and too many. Linda tried to reach Emma, but more soldiers blocked her path. "Emma, hide in the crystal trees." She called out. Emma wanted to help her parents, but she was too small and scared. She ran toward the crystal trees as her mother had told her. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of fighting. The lizard soldiers caught Carlos first. He fought hard, but their electric weapons hurt him badly. Linda screamed and tried to help him, but the soldiers grabbed her too. Emma hid behind a large crystal tree, crying and shaking. She watched as the soldiers hurt her parents. Carlos tried to protect Linda, but the lizard creatures were too strong. "The small human," one of the soldiers said in a rough voice. "Commander Vex wants live specimens for the arena." Emma tried to stay hidden, but one of the soldiers found her. He was bigger than the others, with scars on his face and metal spikes on. his armor. His yellow eyes looked at Emma like she was not a person, but just a thing. "Please don't hurt my parents," Emma whispered, tears running down her face. The scarred soldier laughed. It was a cold, mean sound. "Your parents are useless to us. But you, small human, you will make good sport for our dragons." The soldier grabbed Emma with his clawed hands. She tried to get away, but he was too strong. The other soldiers killed her parents while she watched. Emma screamed and cried, but there was nothing she could do. The soldiers carried Emma to their ship. The inside was dark and smelled like metal and decay. They threw her into a small cage with bars made of some kind of alien metal dot. As the ship lifted off from New Haven, Emma looked through a small window. She could see the crystal trees getting smaller and smaller. She could see the colony where she had been happy and safe. Now her parents were gone forever, and she was alone with the lizard creatures who wanted to feed her to dragons. Emma curled up in the corner of her cage and cried. She was scared and hurt and missed her parents terribly. But deep inside, she felt something else too. She felt angry. The lizard soldiers thought she was weak because she was small. They thought she would be easy prey for their dragons. But Emma remembered how the crystal deer had trusted her. She remembered how all the animals on New Haven had seemed to understand her. Maybe the dragons would understand her too. The ship flew away from New Haven, carrying Emma toward an unknown and terrible fate. But the little girl was stronger then. The lizard soldiers knew she would not give up. She would find a way to survive, no matter what happened next. The journey to the prison world took 3 days. Emma spent those days in the dark cage, eating the terrible food the lizard soldiers gave her. The food tasted like metal and made her stomach hurt, but she ate it anyway because she needed to. Stay strong. Commander Vex Thorn came to look at her twice during the trip. He was the largest of the lizard soldiers, with dark red scales and cold yellow eyes. He wore a black uniform with silver decorations that showed he was important. "This small human will not last long in the Crimson Pit," Vex said to his soldiers. "But she will provide some entertainment for our nobles before the dragons finish her." Emma did not speak to him. She had learned that the lizard soldiers liked it when prisoners begged and cried. She would not give them that satisfaction. Instead, she sat quietly and thought about her parents and the peaceful crystal forests of New Haven. On the 3rd day, the ship began to shake as it entered the atmosphere of a new planet. Emma looked through the small window and saw a world of red rocks and smoking volcanoes. The sky was orange and filled with ash clouds. This was Kethmoron, the prison world where the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were kept. The ship landed with a loud crash that threw Emma against the bars of her cage. The soldiers opened her cage and dragged her out. The air outside was hot and smelled like sulfur from the volcanoes. Emma saw the prison complex for the first time. It was enormous, built into the side of a mountain. Tall walls of black stone surrounded it, and guard towers with powerful weapons watched everything. In the center was a huge circular arena called the Crimson Pit. The soldiers pushed Emma through heavy metal doors. Inside, the prison was even more frightening. The walls were covered with cages and cells, and Emma could hear the sounds of many different creatures. Some roared like lions, others shrieked like birds, and some made sounds she had never heard before. "Welcome to your new home, little human," said a voice behind her. Emma turned and saw a female lizard soldier with a scar across her face. This was Kess Ravenclaw, the warden of Kethmoron Prison. Kess had been running the prison for 20 years. She enjoyed watching prisoners suffer and took special pleasure in feeding weak creatures to the dragons. She looked at Emma like a cat looking at a mouse. "You are smaller than most prisoners we bring here," Kess said. "The dragons will barely get a taste of you. but perhaps we can use you to train the younger dragons. They need to learn how to hunt properly." Emma was pushed through more corridors lined with cages. In the cages, she saw creatures from across the galaxy. There were things that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of living stone, and some that she could not even describe. But the most frightening sounds came from the deepest part of the prison. As they got closer to the center, Emma heard roars that shook the walls. These were not the sounds of ordinary animals. These were the sounds of something much more dangerous. "Ah, you hear our pride and joy," Cass said with a cruel smile. "The Nethrix dragons, 12 of the most deadly creatures ever captured. Each one has destroyed whole cities. Each one has killed thousands of beings across the galaxy. They reached the central area of the prison." Emma gasped when she saw the crimson pit. It was a huge circular arena with stone walls 50 feet high. Around the arena were 12 massive cages, each one containing a dragon. The dragons were enormous. Each one was as big as a house, with scales that looked like black metal. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness of their cages. Their claws were as long as Emma's whole body. When they breathed, small flames came from their nostrils. "These dragons are kept separate because they kill each other if they are together," Cass explained. "They are perfect killing machines. They feel no mercy, no kindness, no friendship. They exist only to destroy." Emma stared at the dragons in horror. They were the most frightening things she had ever seen. But as she watched them, she noticed something strange. The dragons were not moving around their cages like wild animals usually did. Instead, they sat very still, almost like they were waiting for something. "Tomorrow morning, you will be placed in the center of the pit," Cass said. "The nobles of the Scarix Empire will come to watch you die. It will be quick, I promise you." The dragons are always hungry. Emma was taken to a small holding cell near the pit. The cell had stone walls and iron bars. There was a thin mattress on the floor and a bucket of water. From her cell, she could see the dragons in there. Cages dot as night fell. The prison became quieter. The other creatures stopped making noise and seemed to go to sleep. But Emma could not sleep. She sat by the bars of her cell and looked at the dragons. One of the dragons was looking back at her. It was slightly smaller than the others, with silver markings on its black scales. Its red eyes met Emma's brown eyes, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Emma remembered how the crystal deer had looked at her on New Haven. There had been intelligence in its eyes, and pain and hope. When she looked at this dragon, she saw something similar. Not just hunger and anger, but something deeper. "You're not just a monster, are you?" Emma whispered to the dragon. "You're scared and lonely, just like me." The dragon tilted its head, slightly, as if it was listening to her words. Then it made a sound, not a roar or a growl, but something softer. Almost like it was trying to talk to her. Emma felt tears in her eyes, but not from fear this time. She felt sad for the dragon, trapped in its cage, just like she was trapped in hers. Both of them were prisoners in this terrible place. "I'm sorry they caught you too," Emma said quietly. "I'm sorry you're alone." The dragon made the soft sound again. Then, very slowly, it lay down in its cage and closed its eyes. For the first time since arriving at the prison, Emma felt a tiny bit of hope. Maybe the dragons were not the mindless killers that Kess thought they were. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to survive tomorrow. Emma woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps. The guards were coming for her. She had barely slept, but she felt more alert than she had in days. Something was different about this morning. The dragons in their cages were all awake and watching. "Time for the show, little human," Kess Ravenclaw said as she unlocked Emma's cell. "The nobles have arrived to watch you become dragon food. Try to run around and scream a little. It makes better entertainment." Emma was dragged from her cell and pushed toward the arena. As they walked, she passed other prisoners in their cages. Many of them looked away, not wanting to watch another death. But one prisoner caught her attention. In a cage near the arena was a human woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She wore the torn remains of a scientist's uniform. When she saw Emma, she pressed her face against the bars. "My name is Dr. Yara Blackwood," the woman whispered quickly. "I've been studying the dragons for 2 years. They're not what the guards think they are. Be brave, child." Before Emma could respond, the guards pushed her toward the arena entrance. Above them, she could see the viewing platform where the Scarix nobles sat. They were dressed in fancy clothes and jewelry, excited to watch her die. The arena gate opened with a loud grinding sound. Emma was pushed into the center of the crimson pit. The floor was covered with sand that had been stained red with blood from countless previous victims. High stone walls surrounded her on all sides. "Release the dragons," Commander Vex shouted. From the viewing platform, the 12 cage doors around the arena opened at the same time. Emma's heart pounded as she heard the dragons moving. She expected them to rush out and attack her immediately, but they did not. Instead, the dragons came out of their cages slowly. They moved in a careful, organized way that surprised everyone watching. The largest dragon, with scars covering its black scales, stepped out first. The others followed, but they kept their distance from each other. Emma stood in the center of the arena, shaking but trying to be brave. The dragons formed a circle around her, but they did not attack. They just stood there, watching her with their glowing red eyes. "What are they waiting for?" one of the nobles shouted. "Why don't they eat her?" Kess Ravenclaw looked confused and angry. The dragons have never acted like this before. They should have killed her by now. The scarred dragon, which was clearly the leader, took a step closer to Emma. She could feel the heat from its breath and smell the sulfur from its nostrils. But when she looked into its eyes, she did not see only hunger. She saw intelligence and something that looked almost like curiosity. Emma remembered what Dr. Blackwood had said. These dragons were not what the guards thought they were. Very slowly, Emma held out her hand toward the dragon. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said in a soft voice. "I know you're not just a monster." The dragon tilted its massive head, studying her. Then it did something that made everyone in the arena gasp. It lowered its head until its snout was near Emma's outstretched hand. Emma could feel the dragon's hot breath on her fingers. She was terrified, but she also felt something else. She could sense the dragon's emotions, just like she had with the animals on New Haven. The dragon was not evil. It was tired and sad and angry about being trapped. "You remember being free, don't you?" Emma whispered. "You remember your home." The dragon made a low rumbling sound. Not a threatening growl, but something gentler, almost like it was agreeing with her. The other dragons began to move closer, but instead of attacking Emma, they seemed to be protecting her. They formed a tighter circle around her, facing outward, toward the guards and nobles. "This is impossible," Kess screamed. "Dragons don't work together. They kill each other." But Emma could feel that the dragons were communicating with each other somehow. She could sense their thoughts and emotions, becoming connected. The dragon with silver markings that she had seen the night before came closer to her. "You're the one who looked at me last night," Emma said to the silver-marked dragon. "You were trying to tell me something." The dragon nodded its great head. Emma reached out and touched its snout. The moment her hand made contact, images flashed through her mind. She saw green forests and blue skies. She saw dragons flying free, living in harmony with other creatures. She saw their world before the Scarix had destroyed it. "You're not from different planets," Emma said with sudden understanding. "You're all from the same world. You're a family." The dragons made sounds of agreement. Emma could feel their pain and loneliness. They had been separated from each other for years, forced to live in isolation and used for entertainment. But her presence had somehow awakened their ability to connect with each other again. The largest dragon, which Emma decided to call Shadowing, began to communicate with the others using sounds too low for human ears to hear. The dragons started working together in ways that amazed everyone watching. They used their claws to move stones and create a shelter around Emma. They shared pieces of meat from their feeding time, making sure she had food. They took turns standing, guard while the others rested, hit the electric prods. Kes shouted to her guards, forced them to attack. But when the guards approached with their weapons, the dragons formed a wall of scales and fire. Any guard who came too close was met with a warning blast of flame that singed their armor. Dr. Blackwood watched from her cage with amazement. "Incredible," she whispered. "The child has awakened their collective consciousness. They're remembering who they used to be." As the hours passed, Emma learned to communicate with the dragons through touch and emotion. She could feel their memories and their hopes. They showed her visions of their homeworld, where dragons had been the guardians and protectors of all life. The silver-marked dragon, which Emma named Starlight, seemed to be the youngest. It stayed closest to Emma, almost like it was her personal guardian. The other dragons accepted this arrangement, treating Emma like she was part of their family. "You've been waiting for someone who could understand you," Emma said to Shadowing. "Someone who could help you remember who you really are." Shadowing rumbled in agreement. For the first time in years, the dragons were not just surviving. They were living as a family again. And Emma, the small human girl who had lost everything, had found a new family too. The nobles and guards could only watch in confusion and fear, as the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy protected a little girl who had shown them kindness. 3 days had passed since Emma entered the arena. The Scarix nobles had become bored waiting for her death and had returned to their ships. But Kes Ravenclaw was more angry than ever. She paced around the arena, screaming at her guards. "This is impossible. Dragons are stupid beasts. They cannot think or plan." Kes shouted. But even as she said it, she could see the dragons working together in ways that proved her wrong. Dr. Yara Blackwood had been watching everything from her cage. She had been a prisoner for 2 years, captured when the Scarix attacked her research station. During her time here, she had learned to make simple signs with her hands to talk to other prisoners. When the guards were not looking, Dr. Blackwood used her hand signals to talk to Emma. Emma was smart and learned the signals quickly. "The dragons are called Nethrix," Dr. Blackwood signed to Emma. "They come from a beautiful world with forests and rivers. They were the protectors of their planet." Emma looked at Shadowing and felt sad. She signed back. What happened to their world? "The Scarix destroyed it," Dr. Blackwood answered. "They took the dragons as prisoners and made them fight for entertainment. But the dragons remember everything. They have been waiting for someone who could help them become whole again." Emma touched Starlight's snout and felt the dragon's memories. She saw the Nethrix homeworld as it used to be. Green mountains covered with trees, clear blue lakes, and dragons flying freely through the sky. The dragons had not been fighters then. They had been gardeners and builders, working with other creatures to make their world beautiful. "You were not killers," Emma whispered to Starlight. "You were helpers." Starlight made a soft rumbling sound. Through their connection, Emma could feel that the dragon wanted to be a helper again, not a prisoner forced to fight. Dr. Blackwood signed more information to Emma. "The dragons can speak to each other with their minds, but only when they are together. Being separated made them forget how to do it. You help them remember." Emma began to understand. The dragons had a special power that let them share thoughts and feelings. When they were kept apart, they became lonely and angry. But when they were together, they could think and plan as one big family. Over the next few days, Emma learned that the dragons had been planning an escape for a long time. They knew every guard, every weapon, and every weakness in the prison. They had just been waiting for the right moment. "We need to free the other prisoners, too," Emma told Shadowing. "Everyone here deserves to go home," Shadowing agreed. Through their mental connection, all 12 dragons began to share information about the prison. They had noticed things that the guards thought they were too stupid to see. Emma learned that the prison's power came from a single control room deep underground. The dragons knew where all the guards slept and when they changed shifts. They had even figured out how to open the electronic locks on the cages. "Tonight," Emma said to the dragons. "We do it tonight." As darkness fell over Kethmoran, the dragons prepared for their escape. They moved quietly in their section of the arena, getting ready for what would be the biggest prison break in galactic history. The first part of the plan was simple. Starlight used her claws to scratch at a loose stone in the arena wall. The stone looked small, but it was actually holding up a much larger section of the wall. When it came loose, a whole section of the wall crumbled down. The guards heard the noise and came running. "The wall is falling down," one guard shouted. "Get the repair equipment." While the guards were busy with the wall, Shadowing breathed. A thin stream of fire at the electronic lock on the arena gate. The heat melted the circuits inside the lock, and the gate swung open. The dragons moved out of the arena in perfect formation. They had practiced this in their minds many times. Each dragon knew exactly what to do. 3 dragons went to the control room to destroy the prison's power systems. 4 dragons went to free the other prisoners. The remaining 5 dragons, led by Shadowing, went to deal with the guards. Emma rode on Starlight's back as they flew through the prison corridors. She had never imagined she would be flying on a dragon, but it felt natural and right. Starlight was careful to keep her safe as they moved through the prison in the control room. The dragons found the main computer that controlled all the cage locks. One dragon breathed fire on the computer, while another used its claws to tear apart the backup systems. Suddenly, every cage door in the prison opened at the same time. Creatures that had been prisoners for years began to pour out of their cells. There were beings from dozens of different worlds, all angry about their captivity. Some looked like giant insects, others were made of living crystal, and some were so strange that Emma could not describe them. Dr. Blackwood was one of the first prisoners to be freed. She ran to Emma and hugged her tightly. "You did it, child. You actually did it, but the escape was not over yet." Kess Ravenclaw and her guards were fighting back with their electric weapons and laser guns. The prison alarms were screaming, and emergency lights flashed red throughout the complex. "The Scarix fleet is coming," Dr. Blackwood warned. "They will try to stop us before we can get off this planet." Emma looked at Shadowing. Through their connection, she could feel the dragon's determination. The Nethrix had been prisoners for too long. They were ready to fight for their freedom and the freedom of all the other prisoners. "Then we fight," Emma said. "All of us, together." The dragons roared in agreement. Their roars were joined by the sounds of hundreds of other freed prisoners. The sound echoed through the prison and out across the volcanic landscape of Kethmoran. For the first time in decades, the prison world was no longer under Scarix's control. The uprising had begun, and there was no stopping it now. The sky above Kethmoran filled with Scarix warships. Commander Vex Thorn had called for help when he heard about the prison break. 20 battle cruisers now surrounded the planet, ready to destroy anyone trying to escape. Emma stood on the roof of the prison with Shadowing and the other dragons. She could see the enemy ships blocking out the stars. But she was not afraid anymore. She had learned that sometimes the smallest person could make the biggest difference. "Captain Jake Morrison, to any survivors on Kethmoran," a voice crackled from a communication device that Dr. Blackwood had found. "This is the human rescue ship Starfire. We tracked your signal from New Haven Colony. Are you receiving this message?" Emma's heart jumped with joy. Humans had come to help her. She grabbed the communication device and spoke into it. "This is Emma Martinez from New Haven," she said. "I'm alive, and I'm not alone. We have friends here who want to be free." There was silence for a moment, and Captain Morrison's voice came back, full of surprise. "Emma, we've been looking for you for weeks. Your colony sent us when you disappeared. Can you get to a safe place? We're going to try to get through the Scarix blockade." "We don't need to hide anymore," Emma said, looking at the dragons around her. "We're going to fight." Through her connection with the dragons, Emma could feel their determination. They had been prisoners for too long. They were ready to reclaim their dignity and show the galaxy who they really were. Shadowing spread his massive wings and roared. It was not a sound of anger, but a sound of freedom. The other 11 dragons joined in, and their roars echoed across the planet. Then something amazing happened. The freed prisoners from dozens of different worlds began to roar and howl and sing. Each species made their own sound, but together they created a symphony of liberation that could be heard in space. "Impossible," Commander Vex said as he watched from his command ship. "Prisoners cannot organize themselves. They are too weak and broken." But Vex was wrong. The prisoners were not weak anymore. They had hope, and they had each other. The dragons took to the sky first. 12 massive forms flew up from the prison, moving in perfect formation. They had not flown together in 20 years, but they remembered how to work as one, the Scarix. Ships opened fire with their laser cannons, but the dragons were faster than the enemy expected. They twisted and turned through the laser beams, their black scales glinting in the light from the explosions. Shadowing led the attack on the command ship. He flew straight at it, breathing fire that was hot enough to melt the ship's armor. The other dragons followed, each one targeting a different enemy vessel. But the dragons were not alone in the fight. The other freed prisoners had found weapons in the prison armory. Creatures that looked like living rocks threw boulders at the ships with incredible strength. Flying creatures from the storm worlds created lightning that struck the enemy vessel's doctor. Blackwood helped coordinate the attack from the ground. She had studied the Scarix for years and knew their weaknesses. "Their shields are strongest on top," she told Emma. "Tell the dragons to attack from below." Emma shared this information with Shadowing through their mental connection. The dragon leader immediately changed tactics, diving down and then attacking upward from beneath the ship's Captain Morrison, and the Starfire joined the battle. The human ship was smaller than the Scarix vessels, but it was faster and had better weapons. Morrison had brought a crew of brave humans who were determined to rescue Emma and help anyone else who needed it. Emma, can you hear me? Captain Morrison called over the radio. "We're going to dock with the prison. Can you meet us there?" Emma looked at the battle raging in the sky above them. The dragons were winning, but more Scarix ships were coming. She realized that this fight was bigger than just escaping from prison. "Captain Morrison," Emma said into the radio, "the dragons and the other prisoners don't just want to escape. They want to go home. They want to rebuild their worlds and live in peace." "Then that's what we'll help them do," Morrison replied without hesitation. Emma smiled. This was what made humans special. They could see the good in others and were willing to help, even when it was dangerous. Starlight flew down and landed next to Emma. The young dragon lowered her head so Emma could climb onto her back. Together, they flew up to join the battle. Emma could see everything from the sky. The Scarix fleet was losing. Several of their ships were already destroyed, and others were trying to retreat. But more importantly, she could see that the prisoners were working together like never before. "We're not just escaping," Emma said to Shadowing. "We're starting something new." The dragon leader understood. This was not just a prison break. It was the beginning of a revolution that would spread. Across the galaxy. News of the Kethmoran liberation spread quickly through space. On other worlds, enslaved peoples heard about the dragons and the small human girl who had helped them remember who they were. Rebellions began on dozens of planets. The Scarix Empire, which had seemed so powerful, began to crumble. They had built their strength on the belief that other species were weak and stupid. But Emma and the dragons had proven that wrong. Commander Vex's ship was the last to retreat. As it fled, Emma could see him through the bridge window. He looked confused and afraid. For the first time, he realized that his empire was not as strong as he had thought. 3 months later, Emma stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral planet of Haven Prime. Shadowing stood beside her, no longer a prisoner, but an honored ambassador. "The Scarix Empire has surrendered," the council leader announced. "Their slave worlds are free, and their prison camps are being closed." Emma looked out at the representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Many of them had been enemies before, but now they were working together to build a better galaxy. This all started because one little girl saw dragons not as monsters, but as people, the council leader continued. "Emma Martinez has shown us that our greatest strength is not our weapons or our ships, but our ability to understand and care for each other." Emma smiled and touched Shadowing's snout. The dragon rumbled softly, sharing her happiness. They had both found their families again, and they had helped countless others do the same. The galaxy was free, and it was only the beginning.